Okay. Welcome to Chai Mitzvah topic webinar number 8. Today we're going to talk about gratitude. Modim anachnu lach. And this is a really interesting topic. It's a great framework for deep discussion. I've done it in some places where it's just amazing. So that should be great. I want to make sure that everybody can see the webinar on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Perfect. Okay. So let's start out with the agenda. We were talking about last month already before we started, but because we're recording it and there are people who are going to be watching it who haven't heard our discussion, I would just like to kind of sum it up. We were saying that that some of the discussions became a little bit political, but that most of us agreed to disagree, and that it was an interesting topic, certainly one that was worthwhile doing. And that that the attitudes towards Israel kind of depended on people's generations and their experiences. Is there anything anybody wants to add to what I just kind of summed up? Okay. Oh, okay.
It'll be fun.
Okay, and Sharon, I'm gonna get you on the screen as well. Hi, I'm glad that you're joining us. And there, I'm getting people on the screen if I can, because I like to talk to people that can talk back to me rather than just kind of to an empty space. So if anybody wants to jump in at any time, let me know. And meanwhile, let's start with the themes of gratitude. It's a really great topic. So the themes, psychological studies have shown that feeling and expressing gratitude are important components of a happy and balanced life. There are elements in Jewish tradition that can help us to be aware of our blessings and to express gratitude. And expressing gratitude doesn't mean ignoring that there's pain and hardship in the world. It means making a daily effort to see that along with the difficulty, there's good in life that's worth celebrating. Later on in the webinar, we can discuss how being grateful can actually improve your health. There's a study that's in there. I found this to be a very interesting and compelling reason to study gratitude, study these texts if you need a reason. So it's very interesting. So a great way to get started with the session is to put these quotations about gratitude around the room and ask the participants to read the quotes. And after reading them, they can select a quote that speaks to their understandings of the value of gratitude and stand for that quote. And you can ask them to discuss their choices with other people who are standing near the same quote, or to think of the reason they chose a quote if they're standing by themselves, and then ask them to share the reason behind what they chose with the group. I've done it before. It really opens an amazing personal and meaningful discussion. I'm just going to go through them a little bit so that if anybody wants to jump in and say anything, they can. There's only one surprise: to be alive, and that may be forgotten daily if daily not remembered. The surest way to suppress our ability to understand the meaning of God and the importance of worship is to take things for granted. Indifference to the sublime wonder of living is the root of sin. Rabbi Meir used to say, it is incumbent upon each person to bless God in 100 blessings daily. Whether we recite one bracha or 100 brachot each day, the experience can heighten our awareness of the wonders in our daily lives and help us to respond to them with gratitude. This is my favorite. I don't know why. Who is rich? He who is happy in what he has. As it is said, when you eat the labor of your hands, happy will you be, and it will go well with you. I especially like this in relation to the teens because I think we overprotect so much these days, and being able to accomplish something is actually the only way to have any self-worth, I think. This is one that's a favorite of a lot of people. Gratitude rejoices with her sister joy and is always ready to light a candle and have a party. Gratitude doesn't much like the old cronies of boredom, despair, and taking life for granted. And then the last one, to spend our lives enthusiastically acclaiming the wonders of the world is unnatural. Yet if we never acknowledge the good things that are ours, we're ungrateful, and we can become deadened to an awareness of life's precious gifts. Reciting a bracha helps us to restore the balance. And these are all also things that are going to come into play as we go through the rest of the topic, so they're good to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so does anybody want to jump in and say anything about which quote spoke to them or anything specific that they liked? or why? Okay, well, if you do, feel free to jump in. And when you do this topic later on with your groups, it'll be interesting to see what they say. Okay, so then the next text that we're going to study is from Deuteronomy. Because this session usually falls close to the time of Shavuot, one of the major themes of Shavuot is an expression of gratitude. During the time of the temple, the people would bring their first fruits to the temple to say thank you for the harvest. And these bikurim were brought, they were the choicest fruits, and they represented the best results of the hard, dedicated work of the people in the fields. So you can see how the quotes I just read relate to that. And when they brought the first fruits, each person would recite this blessing that you see here. So I'm going to read it so that we can kind of keep in mind this as we read it. Okay. My father was a fugitive or wandering Aramean. Remember this as we go to what we're going to discuss. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there. But there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Eternal, the God of our fathers, and the Eternal heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. The Eternal freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and an awesome power, and by signs and wonders. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Wherefore I now bring the first fruits of the soil which you, O Eternal, have given me. So when you look at this, the verses have a pattern in them. They begin with remembering a hardship, wandering, few in numbers, slavery, oppression in Egypt. And they end by recalling a positive change that followed this. Becoming a numerous nation, freedom, entrance to a land flowing with milk and honey. So this way the verses serve as a model for expressing gratitude. The model is, in order to be truly grateful, we can't forget what we've overcome in our lives. In our peak moments of triumph and our everyday moments of satisfaction, there's a need to express gratitude because we want to really appreciate the good that there is in our lives. And the fact that the verses recall both struggle as well as gratitude serves as a reminder that gratitude doesn't mean ignoring hardship. Israel would come to the temple owning their past, okay? Just like you break a glass at a wedding, you always want to remember the past. We were a poor, marginalized, enslaved nation. And then we say we were saved by God and blessed by God with these fruits. So it means that despite the difficulties in our lives, we work to recognize and acknowledge good in our life. And this verse here also teaches the value of being specific. We're not just saying we had problems, we overcame them. We're being very specific about what they were, because it's important to be specific and remember all the details. That helps us to be more grateful.
Nina?
Yes.
This passage combines Passover with Shavuot and the counting of the Omer, correct?
Exactly, yes. And so it's perfect for this time of year because that's what we're doing.
Sorry, Nina. Hi. Can you go? You made so many good points. I was trying to write them down. So you started off by talking about the verse, and you were saying something, and you said in order to be truly grateful. You were sort of going through the beginning and the end. Can you just do that again? Because I'm writing down some of the buzzwords and key things that you're saying. Thank you.
No, I'm thrilled. Yeah, what I was saying was that in order to be truly grateful, we have to, for one thing, remember where we were. Like, we're not ignoring the fact that we've had hardship. We're really proud that we overcame the hardship. And I think that in order to have that good feeling, you really need to be able to not just always have everything perfect, but to overcome difficulty. And also that we want to be specific, because it's great to really not just be general, but to think of the actual things that happen in a way that's meaningful personally to us. So also, I'm going to, put a recording of this on the. So yeah, but you know what? I'm the same way as you. I like to be able to do it while it's doing it, because then you have to do it again otherwise. I'm going to go to the next part, which is so interesting: research on gratitude and thankfulness. So before going on with our Jewish texts, this is a secular belief about gratitude from modern day research. These findings come out of an area of psychology known as positive psychology, which is the study of mentally healthy people and what makes people happy. And it's interesting that we are so focused on this today, because I think it's really good, but I think it's also a little bit like we don't know how to weather hardship nowadays. Like everybody has to be happy all the time, which is a little scary, but this is also very good because this research shows how gratitude can help you to be healthier and happier. So what they find is that they did an experimental comparison. People who kept gratitude journals on a weekly basis exercised more regularly, reported fewer physical symptoms, felt better about their lives as a whole, and were more optimistic about the upcoming week compared to those who recorded hassles or neutral life events. A related benefit was observed in the realm of personal goal attainment. Participants who kept gratitude lists were more likely to have made progress toward important personal goals, academic, interpersonal, and health-based, over a 2-month period compared to subjects in other experimental conditions. In well-being, they found that grateful people report higher levels of positive emotions, life satisfaction, vitality, optimism, and lower levels of depression and stress. The disposition towards gratitude appears to enhance pleasant feeling status more than it diminishes unpleasant emotions. Grateful people don't deny or ignore the negative aspects of life. They just feel better. And spiritually, those who regularly attend religious services and engage in religious activities such as prayer and reading religious materials score more likely to be grateful. Grateful people are more likely to acknowledge a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and a commitment to and responsibility to others. Gratitude does not require religious faith, but faith enhances the ability to be grateful. And I have to tell you, I had a really interesting, my first Chai Mitzvah group that I led like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a woman there who I'm still friends with. Her husband was really sick. He had cancer. And she spent a lot of time in the hospital, and thank God he's okay now. He's been in remission now for a couple of years, but at the time it was really terrible. And when we did gratitude journals, I never forgot this. We kept a gratitude journal for a month, and then we came back and shared them. And one of the things she said was she was really grateful for when she got to be outside in the sun, because she spent so much time indoors in the hospital. And she's the most positive person, and she got through this. And I just thought that it's so wonderful that someone could find something to be grateful for in this terrible experience. And I always think of that whenever I'm feeling grumpy or, feeling sorry for myself. I just want to point that out. But also, if we look at what we just read and we think about how these findings resonate with our earlier conversations about the gratitude quotes and the Deuteronomy text, we can see a similarity in that we're not ignoring difficulties, but we are grateful for the positive things in our life and our ability to overcome them and to see the good in life. So I'm going to ask if there are any questions or anybody wants to say anything. Okay, and I will go on to reflection. Okay, so also before looking at the rabbinic text we're going to examine, you can ask your group to pause and take 5 minutes to try their hand at expressing gratitude. Give me each a piece of paper. Have everyone list as many things as they can think of that they're grateful for in their lives. It's kind of like those 100 blessings that we talked about before. And when I've done this, I've begun with a guided meditation. I'll have people just sit and either close their eyes or just look inside and think about the last 24 hours, where they were at this time yesterday, going all the way through waking up this morning into this moment. And then ask, what are you grateful for? And list as many specific items as you can. And even as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, well, last night was pretty nice, went out to dinner. But, there's like a lot of nice things you can find, even in your work, even in your being in traffic. There's always something positive, And once people get writing, it's interesting. And also they can remember this, because we're going to do it again later, and compare the first 5 minutes of writing what you're grateful for to the last 5 minutes, and see if going through all these texts has changed their ability to be grateful. And the rabbinic texts, they relate to that. The rabbis express the idea that when we practice gratitude, we can see clearly how much good there is in their lives. And the point is that to be grateful actually takes practice and effort. By consciously practicing gratitude, we actually become more grateful. And we find more positives in life. It's kind of like they say, fake it till you make it. If you smile, you start to feel happier. It's kind of the same thing. If you practice looking at what you're grateful for, you actually become more grateful. And this practice gives us a tool to help us balance our focus between the things we don't have and the things we do have. So we can look at how the rabbis express this idea. Our rabbis taught, and this is so Talmudic, so think about this juxtaposition. Our rabbis taught it is forbidden for a man to enjoy anything of this world without a benediction. And if anyone enjoys anything of this world without a benediction, he commits sacrilege. Rabbi Judah said, in the name of Samuel, to enjoy anything of this world without a benediction is like making personal use of things consecrated to heaven, since it says, the earth is the eternal's and the fullness thereof. But Rabbi Levi contrasted the two texts. He said, it is written, the earth is the eternal's and the fullness thereof, but it's also written, the heavens are the heavens of the eternal, but the earth hath God given to the children of men. So there's no contradiction. In one case, it is before a blessing is said, and in the other case, after. So it's like using something that doesn't belong to you without permission. And I guess the blessing is kind of like the permission that you're getting. So you can even compare it to like if family members might borrow something that belongs to you without your permission, or other instances where people, use your stuff or in some way don't get your permission for something. And we can discuss if this is a valid comparison or not. Because after all, we're talking about the earth and the things that are God's, as opposed to like, your high heels or your radio or whatever, or your car. So just a quick, do you think this is a valid comparison, and why are I not? Nobody is going to volunteer. Well, I personally think it is, because it makes it a personal, and to me it makes it more personal and relevant to think of it that way. So it's an interesting thing. So the rabbis understood that there's no limit to what we don't have. We can spend our lives stuck in that place where all we can see is endless dissatisfaction. And that's the message behind the Talmudic proverb in Pirkei Avot, which asks, my favorite one that I read before, who is rich? And then the answer is, those who rejoice in their own lot. We can have all the riches in the world, but until we see them and acknowledge them, we don't possess any of them. The rabbis seem to resolve the contradiction in the text by explaining that before you express gratitude and acknowledge God, the world belongs to God. But once we express gratitude and acknowledge God, the world is a gift from God to us. So if we look at how this text relates to our own lives, we can probably discuss the idea that expressing gratitude allows us to see the gifts in our lives and actually makes us possess them. And I was thinking also, because Earth Day was last week, this is not only our individual experience, but also if we look at this through a lens of respect for the earth, as well as respect for other people and respect for God, we can be grateful for nature. And I think that's an important part of helping the earth, if we respect it and are grateful for what we have. Questions, comments? Okay. Let's look at the biblical origins of brachot, which relates to this really nicely. Brachot are tools that Judaism gives us to express gratitude. One way that brachot help us to practice gratitude is that they can help us to slow down our busy lives. They create stopping points as we move through our daily routine. And rather than just moving through the day, brachot push us to stop and appreciate what we have. So we don't rush, we express gratitude, and in that way, I think our things become more positive. So if you look at the Tanakh for the brachot that we recite today, you won't find them. You'll find the beginnings of our modern day brachot. In the Bible, we read about individuals who reacted to God's word by reacting in a way that was grateful. And these expressions of gratitude to God were the beginnings of the fixed pattern of bracha. So you can see on the screen, when he found a wife for Isaac, Abraham's servant said a bracha, because he was just thrilled that he was able to do that. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, responded with a bracha when Moses told them about the miraculous events that Israel encountered on their journey from slavery to redemption. David expressed his gratitude to God for his son Solomon's succession to the throne. And when Ruth gave birth to a child, the Israelite women expressed their happiness to Naomi through a bracha to God. But the rabbinic brachot are a little bit different. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth, hamotzi. Or blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with commandments and commands us to light the Shabbat candles. So how are these different, the first to the second? One thing I can point out, the grammatical change in the structure from third person to second person. The addition of the word you changes the formula. So you're talking to God. It's a conversation between a person and God. And one explanation for this change is that there's a desire to have a more intimate relationship with God and a personal relationship between humans and God through this change in the way the brachot are said. And this brings us to sources of gratitude from the Siddur. So as we were saying, prayer reminds us to articulate our gratitude every day. And we're going to take a look at a very basic prayer that you say when you wake up in the morning, acknowledging God's compassion and restoring us to life each day. I don't know if there are a lot of people who still do this, but it's a really nice thing to do. It's a really good way to start off the day by saying Moda Ani, thanking God for restoring our soul with compassion. Because, we know what sleeping is, but it almost feels like you're in another world and you need to come back. So that's one of the things that we talk about here. And if you read this prayer, there are other prayers in the source book also, and you can read all of them. I just took this one as an example to read and then ask participants if this prayer relates to the gratitude that they feel and wish to express on a daily basis. And then to talk about it, explain their thoughts. Okay. Are there any questions or comments to this point? Okay, then I am going to go on to a really nice story. It's an urban legend with a message. This may or may not be true, but it's a great story about Yitzhak Perlman. So one evening, Perlman was in New York to give a concert. As a child, he'd been stricken with polio, and so getting on stage was no small feat for him. He wears braces on both legs and walks with 2 crutches. Perlman labored across the stage slowly until he reached the chair in which he seated himself to play. As soon as he appeared on stage that night, the audience applauded and then waited respectfully as he made his way slowly across the stage to his chair. He took his seat, signaled the conductor to begin, and began to play. No sooner had he finished the first few bars than one of the strings on his violin snapped with a gunshot-like force. At that point, Perlman was close enough to the beginning of the piece that it would have been reasonable to have brought the concert to a halt while he replaced the string to begin again. But that's not what he did. He waited a moment and then signaled the conductor to pick up just where they had left off. Perlman now had only 3 strings with which to play his soloist part. He was able to find some of the missing notes on adjoining strings, but where that wasn't possible, he had to rearrange the music on the spot in his head so that it all still held together. He played with passion and artistry, spontaneously rearranging the symphony right through to the end. When he finally rested his bow, the audience sat for a moment in stunned silence. And then they rose to their feet and cheered wildly. They knew they had been witness to an extraordinary display of human skill and ingenuity. Perlman raised his bow to signal for quiet. "You know," he said, "it is the artist's task to make beautiful music with what you have left." We have to wonder, was he speaking of his violin strings or his crippled body? And is it true only for artists? We're all lacking something, and so we are all challenged to answer the question. Do we have the attitude of making something of beauty out of what we have, incomplete as it may be? And that's a really nice message. It really encapsulates, I think, the message of this unit. And that brings us to the part 2 reflection. Okay, so now that we've gone through these different tests and thought and discussed what gratitude and what it can be for us, Um, Ask your participants to go back to their lists and see what they can add. Take another 5 minutes to do this. Push themselves to make it really specific. And think about this prayer, the Asher Yatzar prayer, which I have up on the screen here. It's on page 10 in the source books. And look at the specific details recorded in the prayer, and that'll help push them to think of their own things to be grateful for. Okay, so it says, praised are you, eternal our God, who rules the universe, fashioning the human body in wisdom, creating openings, arteries, glands, and organs, marvelous in structure, intricate in design. Should but one of them fail to function by being blocked or opened, it would be impossible to exist. Praised are you, Adonai, healer of all flesh, sustaining our bodies in wondrous ways. We gratefully acknowledge, this is from the Amida, we gratefully acknowledge that you are Adonai, our God, and God of our ancestors throughout all time. You are the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation in every generation. We thank you and praise you for our lives that are in your hand, for our souls that are in your charge, for your miracles that daily attend us, so we're thinking about daily miracles, and for your wonders and gifts that accompany us, evening, morning, and noon, so all times. You are good, your mercy is everlasting, you are compassionate, your kindness never ending. We have always placed our hope in you. So before you think seriously about the good in your life, this could be really like, oh yeah, another prayer, you're just, saying thank you. But I think once you seriously think about all the wonders that we do have, it becomes meaningful. And it's helpful if you're making a list of specific things you're grateful for, to look at this prayer and think about what it says. And then it's kind of, yeah.
Excuse me for 1 second. I just wanted to tell you this particular prayer, mindful conscious living, the rabbi who ran this one for us brought this prayer in, and we actually sang a song about it in Hebrew, and he explained that it was a blessing for the bathroom, and he went through a whole big thing on it, but it was a very important part of how he was explaining mindful and consciousness has to be part of our daily lives. So it's interesting to bring it in again.
Yeah, do you think you could give us that info so we could share that song? Do you know where it's from, or? Yeah.
I have to look through my notes. I'm sure I have it. Everybody who's come and spoken has brought something with them. I have to look through this stuff, but it was very interesting that he had this. I will see if I can find it.
I think people would really enjoy that. I know I'd like to see it, so it would be great if you could share it. That'd be really helpful. Thanks.
Sure.
Great. Okay. So then a nice thing to do is, with this in mind, pick an amount of time, either this week or until the next meeting or 1 month, whatever works. And each day, wake up or when you go to sleep, add one more item to the list that the people started. I'm telling you, we did that in my group, and it was really so meaningful when we shared it. Like I told you about that woman whose husband was in the hospital. But for everyone, it was really meaningful. And that's nice. And another nice thing to do is create a group gratitude journal where, give papers and markers to everyone and have them each contribute a page to the journal where they list specific items that they're grateful for, and they can use words or pictures and then put it in a cover and share it with the group. I've done that, and it's been really nice. Any more questions or comments before I go on? Okay, great. These are supplemental materials that are very fun to have. In addition to Eli Talks on Gratitude, with monkeys on gratitude, there's also one that I was talking about before, how happiness has become a cultural obsession. So the two Eli Talks, one is What Makes Us Happy. Dr. David Pelkovitz delves into the intersections of the secular view of happiness and the Jewish view of happiness, which is simcha. And he uses the examples of goal setting, mindfulness, and gratitude to demonstrate how current research in positive psychology aligns with old Jewish wisdom about happiness. And that's kind of what we were discussing before also, about how you are healthier and you achieve your goals. So this is an Eli talk about the same thing. And then happiness and Jewish identity. So, we always think of ourselves as neurotic and cynical and tragic. But of course the media and our history would have us think that we just can't help it. But this woman, Olga Gilbert, has another idea, and she says that Judaism offers a wealth of resources for seeing and cultivating happiness even during hard times. So that's a nice thing to watch. the one about monkeys. It's very interesting. It shows altruistic behavior, and not just monkeys, other social animals as well. And then this other one, how happiness became a cultural obsession. And so some psychologists argue that this preoccupation with happiness may actually be making us less happy. And I happen to agree with that. As I look through, all the drugs people are given to, God forbid you should have some stress. I had a friend her father died. She was getting divorced. She was moving from one end of the country to the other. And her doctor prescribed Prozac. And she said she took it once. And then she said, wait a minute, I should be unhappy. And she dealt with her stress and, she's fine now. But, I think sometimes we just can't help it. There are stressful things. So that's kind of, where we are. I would love it if there are any questions. I see we have one more person, Hope, who I'm going to get on the screen now because she should also be able to, for some reason, I can't get you on. Well, if you'd like to ask a question, Hope, just type it. Oh, wait, there you are. Great. All right. So let me see if you are, I don't want you to be muted. Hold on. Here, unmute. Okay, so before we go, I'd like to give everyone an opportunity to share anything they'd like to share, ask any questions, because I just don't like to say goodbye to a blank screen. So, oh, there's somebody else here too. Hold on. Well, I can't get this person on for some reason. Since we're almost done, I would just say, is there anything anyone would like to share? Okay.
I just wanted to, you'll notice that I'm sort of new to the group because although we registered for the program at our Temple Emmanuel, we didn't kick it off this year. And so we have a general membership meeting coming up in May where we get a lot of women to come. And so Sharon Zidney and I thought it would be a great idea because we enjoyed it so much at the Atlantic District Convention to do a similar program. And with the May being gratitude and Shavuot, we just thought it would be great. So we're going to be leading a program similar to the one that you did with this as a taste, hoping to entice a lot of women and whoever to come and do a Chai Mitzvah program that will.
That's great. Oh, I think
so. All these points are great. Yeah, I'm nervous and excited.
You know what? I taught at your synagogue 1,000 years ago. I mean, really, when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter and I stopped, and she's 34. So I taught there a long, long time ago. But I still know your synagogue. It's a great temple.
We just had. We're so ready for this. We just had 64 women at our sisterhood seder.
Wow.
All intergenerational, and we're doing a lot of work as a synagogue with social action, especially with Syrian refugees. We're having Anat Hoffman from Women of the Wall come on May 4th.
Wow.
So we do a lot of great things. We're very lucky to have a very large and active congregation. So I'll have to go back and forth with you separately to make sure that this session is really good. Where do you live, Nina?
So I used to live in Livingston. So I used to be from your area. I now live on a boat in the Hudson River. So when our kids grew up and left the house, we're like, we don't need this house. We always wanted to do this. So right now I am kind of in Rockland County, but I'm totally available. I'm in your area all the time. And I know where you are. So it's easy. So if you need anything at all, just let me know.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that we can get a couple of really big groups of women involved in this. So we're hoping to have a really good program. So I'll be emailing you some. Are we going to get these slides?
Yes, I'm going to send the slides. I'm going to send you a link to the recording. And Michelle, if you can find that wonderful song.
But I have a different question for everybody because I'm very curious because I'm taking this in a little bit of a different direction. I feel like everybody in our group does their homework and reads this material. Mm-hmm. So I'm starting out this, I'm going to use it differently, and I'm hoping to be able to use it congregationally as not only being grateful to God, but being grateful to each other and learning how to say thank you appropriately, because that's part of what gratitude is, and we forget that. So I'm starting out my class actually, because this is the first one I will be teaching because it's so important to me. I'm starting it out with wine and chocolate, and we're going to say a prayer for each one and then talk about gratitude and make gratitude journals. I'm actually sending out an email asking people to send me a name of a song that has the word thank you in it, and I'm going to create a CD for every member of these songs because I think it's that important. But I'm curious if anybody else is taking it not only to be with God secularly, to tie it into something that might be missing in their synagogue themselves, because to me that's what's missing, is that saying thank you portion, and we don't acknowledge what people do.
You know, this is great. I'm taking notes now. I'm going to put this
That's really good.
now. Because that's really, really awesome. And when I send out the email to everyone, you know, who even also wasn't on the call, I think that's such a great idea for when you do the session. I love the idea of starting out with wine and chocolate, two things that people are definitely grateful for. And the idea of and the songs is wonderful. I was just learning about how sound actually can change your spirit and your brainwaves. My youngest kid is in college and she's doing a course. It's psychology and the physics of sound. And I just read her paper. So the idea of starting out with songs, or even that we have songs in prayer, it's so interesting because it really does actually do something to you. So it's an interesting thing. And I love that you're starting out with it. These are good ideas.
Michelle, can you say that point again that you just said about saying thank you as part of being is important to understand how to do that, and people can't, and that sort of ties into how to be grateful?
Correct. Well, to me, you know, you have people who run events and who do all these things, and everybody is so good at attacking and saying what they didn't like, but it's the saying thank you and wow, we really enjoyed it. That is so important that our synagogues, at least in ours, seems to be missing. So I want to focus a little bit on gratitude and being thankful to God. So we'll start out by saying prayers for the wine and chocolate, but then get into how can we be grateful to each other for the things that they've done? And how can we as a community remember to say thank you and to be grateful?
Does
that help you?
Yeah, very much.
It's great. It's really wonderful. That's great. I'm so glad you're sharing these ideas because they're great ideas. And I think it's going to add a lot to it.
You have to be a little creative. I'm learning that, and that's the only way to attract people to want to be part of this, is to get them, is to be creative and to give them something to talk about that other people feel they missed.
Yeah, and it's a really wonderful thing. It's a great thing to do. It's just wonderful. It brings a lot to it. The topics and the texts and the conversations become very personal and are very meaningful. But when you add stuff like that, you really make it yours and you make it something that people love to share. So I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Is there anybody else who would like to add anything? All right. Well, this has been really great. I thank all of you for your great ideas and for your conversation. And I'm excited to hear how your thing goes at Temple Emmanuel, especially.
This is Reva Waller, by the way. I know I logged on as Sharon's, but
yeah, that's why I didn't know how to.
Yeah, sorry. It's Reva Waller. I'm the president of the sisterhood, and so.
Great. And you're WRJ, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you.
I'm not an officer. I'm not. So we have Nancy's our president, and she's the president. I mean, Nancy is in our, in our synagogue, and she's president of Atlantic District. Sharon's director, and then we have 2 area directors in our synagogue as well. I mean, we have a lot. We have like 100 women that go to Bible class on Tuesdays. So, there's a lot of really great programming.
Right. That's what happens when you have a big synagogue.
We have over 1,000 families. Pretty big. We used to say 1,100. Now we say 1,050. But we're really lucky. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I got to read up on all these things.
If there's any questions, email or call. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, it's not going off.
I'm going to make you all go off. Here you go.